I just want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Paulette Brown-Hinds. I am one of the conductors, Footsteps to Freedom Underground Railroad Study Tours, and a publisher of the Black Voice News. For those of you who aren't aware, the Footsteps to Freedom Study Tours were founded by my mother, Cheryl Brown, when she was publisher of the Black Voice News here in California. 30 years ago. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary, and we have been leading tours retracing the steps of freedom seekers from Kentucky to Canada. And we've been doing that for 3 decades. And this is one of our, this meaning the Frederick Douglass Travel Club is one of our um, newest projects. And we're really excited to partner with Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives. Kenneth Morris and myself have been leading the Underground Railroad tours for Footsteps to Freedom I've been leading for 30, almost 30 years, and Kenny for over 20, so 21 years. And it's something that we've dreamed about doing, really looking at the Frederick Douglass's travels and taking these kind of heritage tours, looking at his international and possibly even domestic travels in the U.S. As the most traveled abolitionist of his time. So we're excited to feature today a conversation with Lisa Williams. I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. In conversation with Kenneth Morris. So before I do that, I would like to just briefly going to give an overview of what we're considering for this October. Will be the first of, we hope to be many international travel opportunities. We're joined also by Kennedy Schneider, who is our tour director for Footsteps to Freedom, and she's helping us on the back end of the Zoom today on this conversation. So Kennedy, if you could just jump to my quick slides about the tour. I wanted to just share for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit the Douglass Travel Club website, just douglasstravelclub.com. You will see a lot of information about our first tour, which would be to Scotland, October 6th through the 11th. And these conversations that we're having with some of the guides and the folks that we're collaborating with on the ground, we're doing that in preparation for the tours that will be happening, and this tour that will be happening in October. If you go to the site, you'll see it will be October 6th through the 10th or 11th, depending on the package that you select. And we'll be in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, and Perth. And then if you see October 10th, the Select Your Own Adventure is depending on what package you select, you may want to do something that's not on the itinerary. Our tour hotel is the Intercontinental in Edinburgh, and it is centrally located. Other hotels are around, and we know some people are making arrangement at the hotels, but we'll be leaving every day from the Intercontinental. Kennedy, if you go to the second slide, if you go to the site, you'll see the tour packages include the guided tours, a couple of very special programs that we're working on, and the transportation to the different cities that we'll be visiting the time we're together. The Abolitionist Circle will include 2 special curated private dinners that, once again, we're currently working on and pretty excited about how those are shaping up and the content for those. And then for those of you who are interested in a special curated time towards the end of the trip, so on the 10th of October, there's an opportunity to have a private day of curated, especially for you. Some people be their first time coming to Scotland, and there's certain things they want to see that may not be on our itinerary. And so you'll have a chance to work with our guides, our team, to to pick create something that's really special and meaningful for you. Lodging and airport fare are not included when you see those prices on the website. That's allowing people to pick lodging wherever they like, close to hopefully the hotel, the Intercontinental Tour Hotel. And then people are making travel arrangements. We have people who are coming early, some people are staying later. So you make your own arrangements for that. Kennedy, the last slide. Some important dates. Um, July 1. So we've had the deposit opportunities. People have already started making deposits. We really want to keep this trip limited to 40 people. We want it to be a kind of small group that we tour with for this first tour. So if you look at the website, July 1, we have balances are due, and hopefully you'll have already made your deposit if you're interested. Like I said, some folks have already done that. And then in June and July, we're going to host, Kenny and I will be hosting a few virtual sessions. I'm calling them open houses where you get a chance to meet other folks who are going on the tour. I think some of the solo travelers are interested, especially in who may be going on the trip, but also to ask us more logistical questions about the tour itself. And we can share even more once you make a deposit, more about the curated experiences for the tour. August, we will finalize the itinerary. One thing that we've been talking with Lisa and Celeste about is the October is Black History Month in Scotland, and so then the schedule for that won't come out until more in the summer. So we want to make sure that if there's something that looks really interesting that we can tap into, we want to make sure we leave room for that. So we won't have a finalized itinerary until early August. And then September we'll go over final logistics. But those virtual open houses will be opportunities to ask more specific questions and logistical questions. Thank you, Kennedy, for that. So today uh, we're spending some time talking with Lisa Williams more about her work, about Black history in Scotland, and Penny Morris will be interviewing her. So let me just do a quick intro. They'll talk for a little while. If you have questions, please drop those in the chat. And towards the end of the program, we can ask questions. And even if they're questions for me, I will also put my email address in the chat if you have questions um, that are more specific about just like logistical things about the tour that you might have. You can just send me a quick email on those. So Lisa Williams is an author. Her latest publication is the Big Book of UK History. She is founder of the Edinburgh Caribbean Association and Black History Walking Tours of Edinburgh, which is how I met her when I was in Edinburgh last summer, and that I just Googled Black history in Edinburgh, and there was Lisa. So we ended up doing a wonderful tour. She's so knowledgeable. And so we had a wonderful time with her when we were there in August. She has a master's in arts, festival, and cultural management from Queen Margaret University. She's an honorary fellow in history, archaeology, and the classics from University of Edinburgh. And she serves on several steering committees, including Empire, Slavery, and Scotland's museums, and on an advisory board at the V&A in Dundee. And so we're so excited to have her with us today. She will be in conversation with Kenneth Morris. Kenneth is the great-great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass and the great-great-grandson of Booker T. Washington. You see those amazing men's portraits right behind him. And he is president and co-founder of Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives and partnering with Footsteps to Freedom on the Frederick Douglass Travel Club. So Kenneth, excited to have you here as well. I will let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, Paulette. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to everybody that has joined us. And before we jump into the conversation, I just wanted to mention that it looks like my mother Nettie is online watching. And she is the person that united the bloodlines of the Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington families through the union of her mother, Nettie Hancock Washington, who is Booker T. Washington's granddaughter, and her father, who is Frederick Douglass's great grandson. And so her parents, my grandparents, met in 1941 at Tuskegee Institute. They happened to be on campus the same day. They literally bumped into each other. I'm giving you the short version. If mom were on, she'd give you the long version. Maybe we'll schedule another Zoom for that. But my grandparents bumped into each other, fell in love at first sight, and wound up getting married 3 months later. And my mother is the product of that relationship. And Nettie will be joining us on this trip. And I just realized that her birthday is October 10th. Now, of course, I've known that, but I just realized that it's going to coincide with our anniversary dates. So, Mom, I don't know if you can turn on your camera and just wave and say hello to everybody. But what a nice surprise to have you join us. Yeah, maybe she can't figure out the technology. But anyway, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. I also had an opportunity. My
Hi,
wife.
can you hear me?
Yes, we got you now.
Oh, hi. Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone that I can't see. I look forward to meeting you in Scotland and helping me celebrate my birthday.
Thanks, Mom. So anyway, I had an opportunity. There she is. If you want to wave, Mom.
Oh, hi.
Living history right there.
Yeah. Okay. How do I get rid of me?
Okay, I think Kennedy will do that.
Oh, thank you.
So I had the opportunity to travel to Scotland in November to walk in the footsteps of Frederick Douglass. And I had an opportunity to also take Lisa's tour, and it just blew my mind. It was so much history. And I knew a little bit of the Frederick Douglass story, but I didn't know the deep history of abolition, which we'll get into in the conversation. Just really just uncovered a lot of history for me that really, again, I just had no idea. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. And I will just jump right in. If you can just tell us a little bit about the journey that led you to found Edinburgh Caribbean Association and eventually the Black History Walking Tours. What first really sparked this work for you, and what made you feel these stories needed to be told more publicly?
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, everyone can hear me okay, I hope.
Yeah, we got
Great.
you.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure, honestly, a real pleasure and honor to be invited to be a part of this as well. I think there's a few things that encouraged me to set up, first of all, the Edinburgh Caribbean Association. So I grew up in England, first of all, and then my mom is from the Caribbean, what happened to be right at the moment, very excitingly. So mom's from the islands of Grenada. I was very privileged as a kid to go back and forth to the Caribbean a lot as well. So I think even from the age of about 8, I was trying to kind of fit together the histories in my own young mind. Went to university, and so my undergrad was also including African and Asian studies, a lot of Caribbean history, and then moving to the Caribbean at the age of 22, realizing there's so many, obviously British links, but then focusing on the Scottish links more when I moved to Edinburgh in 2011. Got into some very serious research and just went down lots and lots of rabbit holes looking at the links, the colonial role of Scots around the world, but particularly in the Caribbean, but also the Black presence of Edinburgh. So my tours tend to straddle the two. So focusing on centuries of Black people from continental Africa, African American folks, and also Caribbean folks being in places like Edinburgh and actually having a very, very important effect socially, politically, and so on. So I think it was important to do. There had been work done before me, of course, so many people who were highlighting these connections, Scottish people, Caribbean people, highlighting them, but actually putting it together in a kind of consumable walk, if you like, or an experiential walk where you can spend 2 hours going from, let's say, the old medieval town into the Georgian area of the town. We can do it vice versa. And spending time being in those places, looking at the statues, looking at the buildings, digging very deeply into the stories that are engaging and people can connect with on an emotional level. So it's been a real privilege and a pleasure, and it's always different depending on who comes. Different stories will come out with different people.
Well, I remember walking all over the city with you, and I forget how many hours we were together, but I think we explored every nook and cranny of that city. So many people, they kind of think about Edinburgh through the lens of the Enlightenment, of the Royal Mile, but not necessarily through the lens of Black history or the African diaspora. What are some of these stories or sites that surprise people most when they take your tours?
So many things. So even if you take something like the Enlightenment, or you're focusing on a place like the Royal Mile, for example, without going into too many details, you can think about the African courtiers who were given a lot of respect, paid very well. We're going back 500 years, who were part of the royal court and would have walked up and down the Royal Mile 500 years ago. You might think about the Enlightenment. You might think about a famous historian and philosopher like David Hume, who, said some pretty racist stuff back in the 18th century. But if you dig deeper, you will then start to look at the kind of background conversation between him and a Jamaican scientist who wrote poetry in Latin, who he's actually having a go at. And I might, again, without going into details, I might talk more about the story of the Jamaican man and bring those stories to the present in the place where we are. So I use a lot of imagery, which is very important. And I try to sort of use those images like a mirror to say, what was going on the other side of this story, and bring and center those stories into where we are at the time.
Well, I love that. And yeah, we don't want to give away too much information because we want people to come on the tour, but we'll just kind of just tickle the surface as we move through, this conversation. And, as someone whose family has carried Frederick Douglass's legacy for generations, I've been kind of most moved by realizing how important Scotland was to his journey. And from your research and perspective, what do you think Edinburgh meant to Frederick Douglass? And what did his presence mean to the city at that time?
It meant a great deal to him. So I think having the experience of arriving in a place like Scotland and having the kind of, again, respect, welcome that he received, I think we're very surprised by that. Being in a place where he said he was treated like an equal and a human being for the first time in his life. I think the effect that he had on Edinburgh and Scotland more widely, again, was huge. So we'll be walking in places where he spoke around the city many times. I think people feel very emotional, particularly African-American folks who know a lot about Frederick Douglass, but not necessarily the Scottish side, and know that we are literally walking in his footsteps, and people feel very, very, I suppose, excited, humbled, get goosebumps, when we talk about these things. So I think the effect that he had was getting Scotland ablaze in anti-slavery sentiment. So it was the solidarity that he found here, particularly amongst women. People are surprised by these stories, but also heartened by those stories as well. That sense of hope, that sense of friendship, that sense of people rallying together to fight for what is right, I think is something that everybody can relate to.
Yeah, you had mentioned that he really, felt like a man, a human being when he was in Scotland. And I know we've done a lot of work in Ireland. And that was one thing that was really important to our family, and understanding that when he had escaped from slavery and started speaking for the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society, and then publishing his first book, The Narrative, and the notoriety of that book threatened his freedom. And so that's when he would flee to Europe and go on these tours. And he wrote back that he felt like a man. He didn't have the slave catchers on his heels and the dogs chasing after him. And so that's really important to our family, that he really stepped into a kind of freedom that he had never experienced before. So I really love connecting that part of his story to all of this. And so what I'd like to know really is, like, how have local communities in Edinburgh responded to your walking tours? And have you seen shifts in how people understand their own city's history and Scotland's connection to the wider Atlantic world?
Absolutely. So I started these tours officially in 2018. Started doing the research a couple of years before. We did some test drives. before. So I think they have evolved over time. I've been doing more research, you know, you have different conversations and you bring up different things. People will be interested in different aspects of it. But I have to say, on the whole, it's been extremely positive and really inspiring for me to know that people have found something of value and to watch the ripple effect go across. So now I work with schools, I work with young children. This is becoming part of the curriculum. So we're able to work at a government level, and I'm in a great position where I can talk with children, young children, but also, you know, go into offices and have conversations with people actually setting the curriculum in the schools, work with the teachers to help them feel more confident, tell these stories, to show how it's all interlinked. I think people are surprised at how much of a global hub Edinburgh was, so not just for empire, but also as a place where many African Americans came, and it was like a pilgrimage almost for them, where they're connecting up with each other and important and influential Scots in Edinburgh. But then you get this exciting link also with Caribbean folks, and they're meeting right here in Edinburgh as well. So I think that's very exciting and interesting for people as well.
I love to hear about your work with children. And we know Frederick Douglass's quote, his well-known quote, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And I always add to that, and women. So thank you for the work that you're doing in schools and really teaching the next generation about this very important history. And your work through your organization helps to illuminate the historical connection between Scotland, the Caribbean, and the broader African diaspora. Can you talk a little bit about those threads and why they matter today?
Sure, absolutely. So I think they matter on a lot of different levels. So Scots were involved in lots of different ways, in enslavement, in trading, being merchants, being involved right across the region, of course, in places like Virginia as well as the Caribbean, and many other places, obviously in the US. I think Scots get involved just before England and Scotland come together, and it happens in 1707. And after that, you see the Scots getting very involved in very specific areas, particularly things like medicine. They are also indentured labourers themselves, so you find them in places like Barbados, even from 17th century going onwards. I think what surprises people is the amount of wealth that came from the Caribbean to actually build the city. So you could say schools, universities, this is right across Scotland, schools, universities, railways, infrastructure, industries, many of the buildings, when we're walking, particularly through the new town, they've all got Caribbean connections. Obviously, I'm looking for them, but I think the details and the layers are sometimes quite shocking for people who have been in Edinburgh their entire life and they didn't actually know the depth. It's interesting for me being in the Caribbean at the moment and talking to people here about Scottish links and how much they know as well. So I spend a lot of time trying to link up all the stories on both sides and bring those together.
For those that will be joining us in October, what should they expect from the tour experience? You know, what will they see? You kind of mentioned it a little bit at the start, but what will they see, feel, and take away from walking these streets with you that they simply could not get from a textbook or a lecture?
Sure. I think Edinburgh as a city is very special. It's the #2 tourist city after London in the UK. There's so many layers of history everywhere. And I think finding us within that is very exciting for people and surprising for people. So, like I said, we'll be walking in the footsteps of famous and less famous people, but people who created massive impact here in different ways. I think it can be very emotional in lots of different ways. I prepare people for that. We have conversations around that. We're able to stop and breathe and talk together as we go from one location to another. So by the end, you feel positive, you feel hopeful, you feel inspired, you feel that we focus on stories of love and friendship. The fact that we had an underground railroad in a place like Edinburgh, which couldn't have happened without white Scots helping as well. So I think it's those moments, knowing that people have been working for so many years for liberation in so many ways. I think the fact that the buildings are still here, and I think the fact that you've got the statues in front of you, you've got the buildings in front of you, they're very beautiful, sometimes created through pain and suffering, but aesthetically very beautiful. And I think when you're in the space itself, the gravity hits you. I think it allows you to spark your imagination and really be able to pull those stories and lives and pay witness to people who have been in those places before you.
And I think that's an excellent transition into what I was thinking next to my next question, because one thing that I've experienced personally in Scotland is how powerful it is to stand in the very places where Frederick Douglass once stood. And your work is connected to the idea that place carries memory.
Yeah.
How do you think about the relationship between physical spaces and histories that have too often been overlooked or marginalized?
I think it's very powerful standing in those places and calling forth those stories and memories that haven't been remembered much, or if at all. I think also there's opportunities now, and people just, starting to wake up to the fact that you can commemorate people and stories and movements in lots of different ways, whether that's adding information to something that's already there, creating new kind of artworks, poetry, music. So I've had people come on my tour. They might be from all different backgrounds and heritage, but also adding something of beauty, adding something that could be a permanent structure that you then add to the landscape as well. I think, we've got the connections with the Portrait Gallery. Portrait Gallery have been working hard to also acquire Black sitters and finding paintings of Black people from the past that they didn't know existed.
Wow.
It's also a chance to meet modern, what some people would new Scots, but people who've been born here, have had heritage here, or have newly arrived, African American folks living in Scotland, Black Scots from a variety of different backgrounds, and have that opportunity to also find out what's happening now, what the contemporary issues are, how they're similar to what's happening in the US, and how they might be different in different contexts as well.
Yeah. So we're seeing more people across the African diaspora using travel to reconnect with history, identity across borders. What role do you think Scotland can play in that larger movement of heritage travel and historical discovery?
I think this is a very important and very, very important layer to add into what is already there. The fact that Scotland is known for its heritage, it's known for its travel and tourism, but this is an area that I think adds a very different layer to it in terms of history not being confined to one nation, and the Black freedom struggle being connected all over the world now and then. Frederick Douglass is well travelled, as you know. I think that people in Scotland and the UK in general know a lot about African Americans and African American culture, because that's what we would have grown up. If we're seeing Black faces on TV, we would have been American people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the opposite way, not so much. So I think it's an opportunity also for African American folks to find out more about the Black British experience, to find out about the Caribbean people who met people like Martin Luther King and were connected to Scotland as well. So there's so many different touch points where people have come together and connected and influenced each other in ways that maybe people are not so much aware of. I think it will help us get over the kind of manufactured diaspora wars that sometimes break out on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and a way for us to also come together across countries as well. So is it going to be a beautiful experience in that way?
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited because this experience brings together my organization, Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives, Footsteps to Freedom, Black Voice News, and your organization, and the extraordinary scholarship of Dr. Celeste Marie Bernier, whose decades-long work on the Douglass family has helped to shine a light on this history for audiences around the world. What excites you most about this kind of cross-Atlantic collaboration and what it can make possible?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I think Scotland's also increasingly attracting African American visitors, people interested in the history from all different backgrounds. I think, for example, just thinking about Frederick Douglass referencing Caribbean emancipation and giving speeches on Emancipation Day, and thinking about those connections even then. Haiti, of course, being a statesman representing Haiti, representing America and Haiti. I'm very excited to show what we have, and also for Scotland to value you as visitors, to value you, your family connections and the work that you were doing, and to be able to make those links and relationships, which hopefully will endure for a long time.
We've got just a few minutes left, and I know you touched on this a little bit in talking about preparing people for, kind of the discomfort that they might feel and the legacy of Scotland, around the slave traders and slave holders. And that was a question that we got when we put it out there through a newsletter that we were going to do this conversation. Can you just speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we will reference that because it's a major part of the history. We'll talk about it in reference to what we're seeing around us, but also the personal stories, but also the people who were involved in fighting against it on both sides. So we might talk about the people who were calling for sugar boycotts, or people who were protesting and petitioning. So Scotland's also overrepresented there as well, for fighting for people's freedom. And this goes right through the century, particularly when Frederick Douglass arrives in the 1840s, and that movement becomes probably more radical than anywhere else in the country. And I would say that it's also important to talk about the movements of solidarity of Black abolitionists with white abolitionists working together, and also looking at resistance on the other end. So we're obviously talking about, and we're referencing, and we're making sure that we are truthful about Scots' role in enslavement, in trading, in the kinds of profits that they made for centuries, but also talk about those movements of resistance on the other end as well. So we're making sure that we are respecting the struggle for freedom, including your ancestor, and going into the future. So always leaving with hope, always leaving with a sense of connection, a sense of positivity. Anytime we finish the tour, we go away with good feelings, and thinking about what has gone before to help us move forwards better in the future as well.
Well, thank you for addressing that. And finally, my last question is, when our group arrives in Edinburgh this October and walks these streets with you, what is the one thing you most hope people will carry home after this experience?
I would say it would have to be very special memories that you couldn't get anywhere else. So I think in a place like Scotland, where it's known for its whiskey, it's known for its golf, it's known for its tartan, but also showing how that can connect to African American folks and African diaspora more widely, to show how even those symbols of Scotland that we know so well also have many other meanings and historical links, and to really go away with understanding a place like Scotland in a completely new way, and a very personal way as well.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. This is fascinating, and I can't wait to get back to Scotland to explore this history with you again. And again, thank you so much for your time. And Paulette, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny, and thank you, Lisa. It just took me back to my time with Lisa in Edinburgh. It was just, we had a wonderful day. We were exhausted by the end of the tour, but it was also just, it had my brain just going. And I've, since then, there were things that she told us that I had never heard. And I went back, I was at the Freedom Center in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I saw something. It was something related to what Lisa shared on the tour, and I took a picture of it, and I was like so excited. And I was like, I never knew. I've been going to Freedom Center for 20 years and never understood the significance. But yeah, so there's just so much that we're going to learn together. And as she mentioned, yeah, some of it is some hard history, but there's also going to be, of course, some joy and positivity as a part of this tour. So we're looking forward to it. I've put in the chat, I didn't see any questions in the chat, and I know Kenny had kind of was able to weave in questions that folks had during the process of announcing this conversation. So I did put in the chat the Douglas Travel Club website. I put in my personal email address. If you have questions about, more specific questions about the tour, if you haven't had a chance to make your deposit, send in your deposit, you can always just reach out to me. Or if you reach out, there's a form on the website itself, and it'll also come to me. I want to thank Lisa again. Um, will this tour be offered again as a question? We're going to see what happens on this first one and what the interest is. We Frederick Douglass traveled all over, so we have this dream of like going to all the locations. When I think I mentioned earlier when we heard about Italy, like we didn't know that he had traveled to Italy. So I was talking to someone about that earlier. We know for sure Ireland. That we were debating on starting this actually. We were going to start in Ireland, and then I went to Edinburgh and met Lisa, and we know Celeste Marie Bernier is a professor there at the University of Edinburgh. And I knew Celeste, but I hadn't met Lisa. And so once I did my walking tour with Lisa, I told Kenny, like, we have to start in Scotland. We're not going to start in Ireland. And even though I did a day trip to plan some things for Ireland. So we're not sure what the next trip or where the next trip will be. We're hoping that there is an interest. We are hearing from people that can't participate this year, and they're like, please keep me on the list. And I also think that once we do Scotland, I was sharing with Kenny, we're not gonna want to just stop at one time. So we don't know what that will look like or when that will be, but we definitely are talking about that, and we're gonna gauge the group. Make sure that you sign up. If you go on the website and just even fill out the form, you'll be entered into our database, and we'll make sure we keep communicating with you. This is really a collaborative effort in a way because it's the first time that we're doing this. I don't know, Kenny. I don't know if anyone else is
Yeah,
something.
I do. I just want to say that, we're really encouraged by the registrations that we've already received. And I feel very optimistic that we're going to get to the numbers that we want. And so when that happens, then we will be able to announce the next tour that we do in 2027. This is the Douglass Travel Club. And so what our vision is that it's exclusive, as Paulette mentioned early on, but that you'll have an opportunity to get first offering of what we do in the future if you do the tour this year. So keep that in mind too, as this gets more popular. The spaces might not be available. So, but again, I'm encouraged at where we are with the registrations. So I am optimistic that we will be able to continue this.
Yeah, and I do want to, Kenny and I have been traveling every summer for over 20 years. And just every year we're still learning new things. I mean, so much of this history wasn't, especially when we talk about the Underground Railroad, right? It wasn't documented in the ways that we're used to seeing documentation. So we learned something new. Now for me, this European story and going to Scotland, I mean, it just was so much new information. And Kenny knows I find so much joy in this work. Like I'll call him and just say, hey, guess what? Lisa will have planted a seed, and then it's just like growing, and I see connections all over the place. So
and we've got some special surprises for people that do register early. And for those of you that have already registered, you've received those. And I know, Paulette, you mentioned you're so excited about this, but I know you love putting those little packages together to be able to send out to people. So be on the lookout for those when you do register.
Yes, I have one I'm getting ready to mail today. I do. Well, we wanted to stop at 2:45 our time. We wanted to stop 45 of the hour. So once again, I want to thank Lisa Kennedy. Thank you for doing the logistics on this call. And Kenny, thank you so much for being a partner in this work and moderating the conversation. And all of you for joining us. We will have this recording on the website too. So you'll definitely see if you want to share this with someone who may not have seen it, you'll get it there on the website next week.
Yes, and thank you, Lisa, for joining us, and we'll see you in October.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend, everybody.